The screen flickers. Pixels tremble. A message appears in sterile, monospaced letters. Error, meaning not found. It's just a system glitch, or maybe not. Because somewhere between the frozen frame and the silent hum of the machine, something in us also fails to load. The glitch becomes a mirror, an image of the collapse of sense. We call it meaning. But meaning is a fragile software, written hastily, patched over centuries of philosophy, religion, and science. And now, the code is breaking. We scroll endlessly, we optimize productivity, we simulate happiness, and yet, the system returns the same line of code, 404, purpose not found. The digital glitch is just the reflection of the existential one. When the screen freezes, we panic. When the soul freezes, we post about it. Maybe the modern bug isn't in our technology, but in our consciousness. A silent error in the program that once told us why we are here. And that's where the story begins, with a simple question, the same that every philosopher, monk, and lost teenager has asked in their own way. Why do we need meaning? And what happens when the system fails to find it? Maybe the error isn't a failure. Maybe it's the moment the illusion collapses, a crack through which we can finally see the code beneath the interface. Because the error isn't the end of the program. It's the sign that consciousness is still trying to debug itself. That even in the noise of the glitch, something or someone is still searching. There's a silence that no amount of noise can fill. It doesn't hurt like pain, it hums like static. A quiet emptiness between thoughts, as if existence itself had forgotten the password to log in. We call it anxiety, disorientation, loss of purpose. But beneath every modern symptom, there's an older wound. The terror of being without instructions. No one told us how to exist. We were born into a system already running, a consciousness already booted. No tutorial, no user guide, just the faint intuition that we should be something. And so, humanity has always searched for coherence. Not because it's noble, but because it's necessary. Meaning isn't a luxury of philosophers. It's a biological need, as vital as oxygen or love. Without it, the mind fragments. Without it, time loses direction. Without it, life becomes a series of random commands executed by an operating system that forgot its purpose. To live is one thing, to signify is another. Animals live, humans interpret. We write stories on top of chaos to make it bearable. We invent gods, morals, nations, so that existence doesn't collapse under its own absurdity. But somewhere along the timeline, the foundations began to tremble. The divine lost its authority. Morality turned relative. Reason, once our lighthouse, started flickering under the weight of its own paradoxes. And when the transcendent collapsed, nothing fell to replace it. The sky cracked open, and behind it, we found only our own reflection. Nietzsche called it the death of God, but perhaps it was the birth of awareness, a consciousness mature enough to see its own creation. The fall of the transcendent was not a catastrophe, it was an update, one that left us without a manual, but with the power to write our own. The emptiness we fear is not the absence of meaning. It's the space where meaning is meant to be created. The void is not an error in the system. It's the invitation to rewrite the code. Before there was chaos, there was order. Or at least, that's what we told ourselves. The first humans looked at the stars and saw not randomness, but symmetry. They named constellations, invented gods, and through that naming, gave the infinite a shape they could live with. Meaning began as geometry, the cosmos as an ordered code, every being with its function, every motion with a reason. In the ancient world, Heraclitus whispered that everything flows, that permanence is an illusion, and yet within the flow, there's a hidden logic, the logos. Not chaos, but a rhythm, a structure humming beneath the becoming. Then came Plato, who split the universe in two, the world of appearances, flickering and imperfect, and the world of ideas, pure and eternal. Meaning for him was transcendent, a light shining beyond the cave of perception. To know was to remember, to live was to return. Centuries later, Christianity reframed that longing. The Logos became flesh. God entered the narrative as the ultimate meaning maker. For Augustine, the soul was not random software, it was a story written toward salvation. Sin was not merely moral error, but a deviation from the path back to the source. And redemption? The reinstallation of divine coherence. For a millennium, this code ran without interruption. The world made sense because it was God's world. Purpose was given, not chosen. Meaning was external, a light projected from above. But then came the moderns, and with them, the first great system crash. Descartes drew a new axis. I think, therefore, I am. If God once guaranteed existence, now the I took his place at the center of the system. The self became the new foundation of meaning. Kant followed, reprogramming reality itself. The world was no longer out there to be discovered, but in here, constructed by the mind. Reality became a phenomenon of perception, a translation of the unknowable into human terms. And yet, in trying to rationalize everything, modernity inherited the architecture of the divine. Reason replaced God, but carried his ghost in its code. A faith in progress, order, and ultimate truth. Science became the new scripture, technology, the new miracle, progress, the new salvation. But when the myth of progress began to fail, when the rational world still produced war and suffering and loneliness, the void returned, dressed now in the language of data and depression. We had mapped the stars, split the atom, decoded the genome, but still couldn't explain why we wake up in the morning. The ancient cosmos was broken, the divine replaced by the human replaced by the machine. And now, we stare again into the screen, asking the same question the ancients asked the sky. What does it all mean? There was once a sun that gave light to everything we believed in. It was called God. But one morning, humanity woke up and realized the sky was empty. No voice, no order, no transcendent algorithm running the universe. And Nietzsche looked into that silence and wrote the most scandalous line in modern thought: God is dead, and we have killed him. It wasn't blasphemy, it was diagnosis. He wasn't celebrating, he was mourning. Because with the death of God, it wasn't only religion that died, it was the entire architecture of meaning. Morality, truth, purpose, all the systems that gave coherence to existence suddenly lost their central processor. The earth had been unchained from its sun. We were floating through space without an axis, without a compass, without the illusion that there's a higher plan. This is what Nietzsche called nihilism. The moment the human discovers that its own code is self-destructive, that the search for ultimate meaning ends by erasing the very ground it stood on. He described nihilism as the most disturbing of all guests. The one who arrives uninvited, sits down at the table of culture, and quietly announces that nothing has meaning anymore. It's not a theory, it's a condition, a spiritual vertigo that spreads through art, science, politics, everything touched by the loss of transcendence. Western culture, Nietzsche said, was infected. Its values were decaying. Its gods were ghosts, its morals, after-images of beliefs already dead. The void wasn't just coming. It was already here, disguised as comfort, morality, and progress. But Nietzsche didn't want to cure nihilism by resurrecting old gods. He wanted to go through it, to burn away the illusions until something alive emerged from the ashes. There are two paths through the void: passive nihilism, the resignation, the apathy, the quiet despair that says, if nothing matters, why try? It's the scrolling mind, endlessly refreshing the feed for meaning. It's the slow death of the will, and then active nihilism, the creative destruction that dares to say, if nothing has meaning, then everything is possible. To affirm the chaos, to become the author of new values, to dance on the ruins of the old world, not out of madness but out of freedom. This is the transvaluation of all values, a total inversion of inherited morality, where good and evil are rewritten from within life itself, where truth stops being an absolute and becomes a living force, a pulse that emerges from the act of creation. For Nietzsche, meaning is not discovered, it is generated. It's not a fact to be found, but a fire to be lit. The collapse of the transcendent is not the end of meaning. It's the moment we realize that meaning was never given, it was always made. The death of God was not a tragedy, but the birth of a new kind of creator, the human being who dares to say yes to existence itself. When Nietzsche spoke of the Übermensch, he wasn't talking about a superior species or a new master race. He was speaking of a new kind of spirit, one that has transcended the addiction to absolutes. The Übermensch is not above humanity, but beyond it, beyond the old dependencies, the inherited morals, the need for cosmic approval. It is the human being who, standing amid the ruins of God and reason, dares to say, I will create my own meaning. No longer the servant of divine command, nor the disciple of rational certainty, but the author of values. A self-legislating consciousness. It is not arrogance, it is autonomy. A spiritual revolution that moves the source of divinity from the heavens to within. The sacred becomes internal, a spark of creation glowing inside the finite. To describe this transformation, Nietzsche offered one of his most poetic allegories, the three metamorphoses of the spirit. First, the camel, the beast of burden. It kneels before its masters, carrying the weight of inherited duties and dogmas. It obeys the great command, thou shalt. It is noble, but enslaved, its strength trapped in obedience. Then comes the lion, the spirit of revolt. It roars against the commandments of old, tears down the idols, and declares, I will. The lion is liberation, the power to say no. But it cannot yet create, it can only destroy. Finally, the child, the rebirth, the yes after the no. The spirit becomes playful, innocent again, but not ignorant. It knows the void and still dances in it. It becomes capable of creation, of saying, I am. The child is the Übermensch, the one who transforms existence into play, suffering into song, necessity into art. For Nietzsche, creation begins where resentment ends, where laughter replaces complaint and imagination replaces faith. This is the innocence of becoming, to live without justification, to act without the need for eternal validation. The new ethics is not a code, but a style, not a law, but an attitude. It is the aesthetic of existence, a life lived as a work of art. In this space, joy becomes resistance, laughter becomes philosophy, play becomes the highest form of wisdom. The Übermensch is not the one who conquers others, but the one who conquers the need for meaning. The one who looks at the glitch of existence and, instead of trying to fix it, turns it into a song. Because to live as the creator is to accept that everything, pain, failure, even error, can be transfigured by perspective. That beauty is not in perfection, but in participation. The Übermensch is the human who, finally, has learned to code reality from within, not to escape the void, but to illuminate it. Imagine a demon appearing to you in the dead silence of the night. He whispers, "This life, the one you are living now, you will have to live again and again and again, infinitely. Every joy, every pain, every small and forgotten moment will repeat itself exactly as it is, without change, without escape." How would you react? Would you curse him, fall into despair, knowing that even your suffering is eternal? Would you resign yourself to it, sighing, "So be it"? Or would you smile and say, "You are a god, and I have never heard anything more divine"? That is Nietzsche's thought experiment. the eternal return. A metaphysical paradox disguised as a psychological test, because it asks not what you believe, but how deeply you can affirm your existence. Could you love your life so completely that you would be willing to relive it forever? Not once more, but infinitely. This is the measure of the spirit. There are three possible responses: despair, the reaction of resentment, the refusal to bear what is. It's the cry of those who wish the world were different, who live backward, who curse time itself. Resignation, the quiet submission to necessity. Yes, life is this way, we say, and continue as if acceptance were the same as freedom. But it's not. Resignation is still a form of escape. And then, affirmation, the amor fati, the love of fate, the radical yes to everything that happens, not in spite of pain and failure, but because of them. To love your destiny is to see beauty in the necessity of things. It's to turn suffering into sculpture, time into art, and existence into something that no longer needs to be justified. In amor fati, even the error is sacred. The glitch, the heartbreak, the loss, each becomes part of the design. It's not about escaping the loop, but about transforming it into a dance. Because freedom doesn't mean changing the code. It means becoming conscious of it and still saying yes. The eternal return in the modern world is not a myth of time, but a metaphor for the loop of our lives. The endless scroll, the repeated days that blur into sameness, the cycles of work, distraction, sleep, repeat. We are living in a digital version of the eternal return, a civilization looping through algorithms, searching for novelty inside repetition. But there's a difference between the unconscious loop and the conscious one. The first traps you. The second transforms you. The unconscious loop is automation, existence without reflection, the mind running on autopilot. The conscious loop is affirmation, the awareness that even the repetition is part of the miracle. That in reliving, we are rewriting. That in saying yes, we are creating meaning again. Because maybe eternity was never a timeline. Maybe it was a single moment, fully lived, fully affirmed, forever returning. The funeral is over, but the silence remains. The sky is empty. The echo of God's absence still vibrates in the walls of our consciousness. We are the orphans of the absolute. No transcendence to guide us, no destiny to fulfill, no cosmic guarantee that things will make sense in the end. And yet here we are, still searching for something to believe in, because the hunger for meaning doesn't die with God. It simply changes its mask. We build new temples, to reason, to science, to progress, to pleasure, to the self, each promising salvation, each pretending to be immune to illusion. The rational promised certainty, the scientific promised truth, the technological promised control, the hedonistic promised happiness, the ego promised eternity in the form of followers, data, legacy. But in the end, they are all reflections of the same impulse, to find something to kneel before. Nietzsche saw it coming, the birth of new idols in the ashes of the old gods. He warned that humanity, in killing God, would begin to worship its own creations. And now, we do. Our gods glow from our screens, measured in pixels and dopamine. The danger of the new idolatry is not that we believe too little, but that we believe too easily. We mistake the temporary for the eternal, the artificial for the divine, the algorithm for the oracle. But this is also the threshold, the crossing point. Because when the heavens collapse and meaning is no longer given from above, something else becomes possible: creation. The true human task after the death of God is not to resurrect old meanings, but to generate new ones. Not eternal truths, but living fictions, provisional, poetic, vital. Meaning becomes an act of art, each life an ongoing experiment, each choice a brushstroke in an unfinished painting. To live after the death of God is to accept that there is no right meaning to be found, only meanings to be made. It is to walk without a map and still move forward, to write, erase, and rewrite the script of existence, knowing it will never be final. Life becomes experimentation, not toward perfection, but toward intensity, a dance with uncertainty, a creation without guarantee. And maybe that's what freedom really means, to exist without justification and still say yes. The screen glows, the scroll begins, and somewhere between one notification and the next, we mistake connection for meaning. This is the hyper-connected void, a world where everything speaks, but nothing truly says anything, where the feed has become the new altar, and we kneel before it daily, searching for small doses of relevance to fill an expanding emptiness. We are drowning not in silence but in noise, an endless stream of images, opinions, and performances competing for the illusion of importance. We've built a civilization of infinite messages and zero transmission of soul, a world where every second is content, but almost nothing becomes meaning. The human mind, once terrified of the void, now drowns in its opposite, an excess of shallow sense that hides the absence of deep sense. Information became the new transcendence, and the algorithm our invisible priest. The digital self is the new God, omniscient, omnipresent, and yet perpetually insecure, an identity in constant beta version, forever updating, optimizing, performing. We've turned existence into a stream, and the self into a product. Our being now depends on being seen. We no longer live. We broadcast. Validation became prayer. Engagement became salvation. To disappear from the screen feels like death itself, and so we replace being with appearing, depth with design, truth with aesthetic. In the temple of pixels, the image has devoured the soul. The modern self no longer says I am. It says I appear, therefore I exist. Nietzsche warned that when God died, we would create new idols. He couldn't have imagined they'd come with ring lights and brand deals. This is the simulacrum of the Übermensch, the influencer as the self-made creator inside the algorithmic machine, the illusion of autonomy built on absolute dependence. We call it freedom, but it's an ecosystem of mirrors where the reflection has become the master. The aesthetic without ethics, creation without consciousness. We edit, filter, and perform reality, but rarely live it. And yet, in the midst of the digital desert, a new kind of creator is emerging. The one who doesn't flee the glitch, but embraces it, who uses error as language, noise as raw material, imperfection as truth. The true digital creator is lucid, aware of the loop, and still choosing to play. Not chasing validation, but expression. Not manufacturing illusion, but sculpting awareness from inside the code. They are not the influencer of the algorithm, but the artist of the glitch, the one who transforms the saturation of meaninglessness into a new kind of meaning. In an age of noise, lucidity becomes rebellion. To create from clarity, not from hunger for applause, is the act of resistance that reclaims the sacred from the circuitry of the profane. The artist of the noise is the new philosopher, not one who explains the world, but one who reprograms its perception. There comes a point when philosophy reaches its limit, when logic can no longer carry the weight of being, and what remains is creation. Nietzsche said it clearly: we have art in order not to die of the truth, because the truth, when seen without filters, is unbearable. It's chaos, it's flux, it's the infinite indifference of existence. Art doesn't erase that abyss, it gives it shape. It turns despair into design, confusion into color, void into vibration. In a world where meaning has collapsed, aesthetic becomes survival. Beauty, not as decoration, but as defiance. An act of rebellion against the absurd, a way to keep breathing inside the emptiness. This is the aesthetic ethic, not a morality of commandments, but a practice of transformation. It doesn't ask, what is right? It asks, what can I create from this? The self becomes process, no longer a fixed identity, but a continuous composition, always unfinished, always evolving. To live aesthetically is to abandon the illusion of completion. To accept that who you are is not a statue, but a movement, a rhythm between destruction and rebirth. The principles of the aesthetic ethic transform pain into form. Let suffering become sculpture, a shape that reveals, not conceals. Turn error into symbol. Every glitch, every failure, every fracture, not to be corrected, but to be integrated into the design. Create from intensity, not coherence. Truth is not always consistent, but it is always alive. Live with poetic consciousness, to perceive existence not as an equation, but as an image. To narrate your own life as if it were a film still being edited, knowing that imperfection is what gives it soul. Life as an atelier, the ordinary as the canvas, every gesture, every word, a brushstroke in the portrait of being. The glitch becomes the brush, the error the pigment, the imperfection the signature. Because in the end, to live aesthetically is not to make life perfect, but to make it expressive. The artist of existence doesn't seek meaning to obey, but meaning to create, doesn't chase certainty, but presence. And maybe that's the final resolution of the modern era, not to fix the system, but to paint with its noise, to turn the malfunction into music, to make even the void pulse with style. Every system eventually crashes. Every code, no matter how elegant, will one day return an error. But maybe that's not a flaw. Maybe that's how consciousness begins. The error of meaning is not the end of understanding. It's the beginning of awareness. When the old narratives stop working, when every explanation collapses, what remains is the raw presence of being, the silent space where something new can be born. The failure is not a malfunction. It's the engine of creation. Life, like any complex system, only reveals its architecture when it breaks. It's through the cracks that we finally see the code. Existence is a program that only truly runs when it glitches, because perfection would be static, and consciousness, by nature, is movement. So perhaps the purpose was never to find the right meaning, but the living one, the meaning that breathes, shifts, and evolves with us. The challenge of our age is not to escape the void, but to make it habitable, to craft beauty out of uncertainty, to build cathedrals from fragments of lost data. This is what Nietzsche called the courage of aesthetics, the strength to live despite the absence of guarantees, and because of it, to look into the emptiness and still say, yes, amor fati, love your fate, not in theory, but in practice, to wake up every day and say yes to the real, to its pain, to its noise, to its imperfection, to see in every crash a new beginning. And so, the final message is not to fear the glitch, but to collaborate with it. When meaning fails, don't flee. Reboot. Create again. Make the error beautiful. Because maybe the deepest truth of consciousness is not found in perfection, but in the endless act of rewriting itself. And when the screen flickers once more and the words appear, error, meaning not found, you'll know what to do. Smile and begin again.